Big bonuses, higher wages, lower utility bills, all coming from companies getting tax cuts that are permanent. Now, one lawmaker wants Congress to make the individual tax cuts permanent. Would that put more money in Americans' pockets permanently? Hi, everybody. I'm Dagan McDowell. This is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week, Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Faris, John Layfield, along with Lee Carter and Jessica Tarlov. Welcome to everybody. Gary B., what would making individual tax cuts permanent do for everyday Americans?
Dagan, I think it's very simple. We've seen what it's done for corporate America across the board, whether you say it's the corporations or the people that work for these corporations. They've benefited in almost every metric, and you went through some of them right at the top of the show. For the individual has not yet seen money back in their pockets, but we've seen every time we put money back in their pockets, not by some tax credit, but by cutting marginal rates like Reagan did, like Kennedy did, like so many presidents down the line have done. It is a benefit both to the individual, and because it's a benefit to the individual, it's a benefit to society, to the United States. We should make it permanent, and what it does is the added benefit, it puts the government on a diet. They will come and say, we need the money, 5 years, 10 years out, we'll need the money. No, you need to start spending less. So it's really, I think the economy, the individual, everyone gets a double benefit from this. It needs to be permanent right now.
John, more than 2 million people have gotten bonuses from companies because of this tax reform. Just imagine what would happen to the economy if you also made those individual tax cuts permanent. Should we? Could we?
Yes, absolutely. We should and we could. And corporate America also, look, earnings revisions have not been adjusted for tax policy yet. Most people think earnings revisions will go up, especially in the case of banks, around 20%. That has not been factored in the market yet. So I think you're going to see a leg up in the market from here. But on individual rates, Gary B. is right. Look at historical precedent. He forgot to mention also Coolidge in 24 and Bush in 2001, in addition to Kennedy and Reagan. GDP went up every time, and Treasury revenue went up every single time. The deficit is a complete different question. We're at 19% of GDP for tax revenue. The economy can't take anymore. The fact that these Congress cannot stay within the budget is a complete separate issue. You give money back to Americans. GDP is 70% controlled by consumers. You will see it in the economy, and you will see it in people's pocketbooks.
Lee, the reason that the Republicans didn't do it is because they would need to get to that 60 votes. That would mean getting Democrats on board.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to happen. But I am all for the tax cuts being permanent, except I believe that we have to make some sacrifices in order to make it happen. We can't just, not make the cutbacks. I know we're talking about, Gary B's talking about putting the pressure on. We need to put the pressure on, and they need to get things done. These hard decisions need to be made. I do think it's going to benefit the economy, but it's not going to happen unless we make some sacrifices.
But, Jones, everybody talks about as if the top tax rate is extremely low for individuals. At 37%, it was 35% under President Bush's tax cuts. It was 28% under Ronald Reagan. Why couldn't we potentially make these individual cuts permanent?
Well, okay, I hate to be the only person who's against individual tax cuts, but look, the deficits are not going away anytime soon. It's not like 2001 we had 2000 we had surpluses that you could play around with individual tax breaks. The bottom line is if you're going to cut taxes, every type of tax cut doesn't lead to the next level of economic growth at the same level. And you need there to be offsetting economic growth because of the deficit that's growing, right? When you cut corporate tax cuts, when you cut corporate tax rates, it leads to savings and investment decisions that can grow the economy. When you double the child tax care credit, yeah, they get to spend more money. Everyone likes to have their money back, whatever. But it doesn't lead to an investment decision that grows the economy fast. If you go to the Tax Foundation website, they'll explain how this works. But you get very little growth from low-level income tax cuts or tax credit, all this stuff that goes on that they do to get votes. And all the high-end tax cuts that are for businesses actually lead to economic growth. Unfortunately, voters vote, and they want their little tax breaks and everything. So the bottom line is you need to go for maximum economic growth. This policy package sort of does that the best it can. We're still going to have to cut spending to get the budgets under control, but you can't just give individuals more tax cuts. It doesn't pay for itself at the same rate that a corporate tax tax cut does.
But just ideologically, it's what Gary B talks about week in, week out. It's we make better decisions as individuals with our money than politicians do. And even Bernie Sanders floated the idea of making the middle class tax cuts permanent. And then when Ted Cruz said, okay, let's do this, he was like, that's not what I said. It was taken out of context.
That's my reaction when Ted Cruz says anything, though I don't think he's ever agreed with me that I know of. No, I actually think that we should be having this conversation and maybe also talking about jiggering with the cut to the corporate tax rate to maybe level this out, a la what Jonas was proposing here. This is actually about more than just economic growth. It's about the Republicans fulfilling promises to the American people. Donald Trump campaigned on individual tax cut. He said, I'm going to put more money back in your pocket, not in Lloyd Blankfein's pocket, in your pocket. So I think that it is important. I think the Democrats should get on board with this if it's not just a massive axe for the top set of earners. If it's really about the middle and lower classes, I think that's important, even just on a messaging basis. And I think we should be able to get to 60 votes when you consider that we have 10 senators, Democrat senators, that are up for re-election in 2018 in red states. So I think it's an important conversation to have and to play with that corporate rate a little to maybe make the individuals matter more.
Gary B., did Jessica just get on board with making the individual tax cuts permanent? Is that what we just heard?
It's funny. It's funny, Dagan. I was all ready to go. Jessica drives me crazy. But in this case, take out Jessica and substitute in, of course, the perennial Jonas drives me crazy. Thank you, Jessica, for finally seeing the light. I think we finally moved you over to the dark side. To Jonas's point, Jonas comes at the perspective that the government is some freaking Wizard of Oz back there, empowered with pulling the levers of the economy, making sure we push here, pull here to drive economic growth. That is not the government's job. The government's job is to do a few things: defense, build a few federal highways, provide a safety net for people, that kind of stuff. It's not their job to run GDP. Their job should be to say, what is the minimum amount of money we need to run the government? Everything else that you bring in, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, is yours. That's the job. It's not the job to say, oh, if we do this, we'll have higher GDP growth. That is BS, and I wish Jonas would get beyond it. Other than that, I love him, and especially this time I love Jessica.
I'm not comparing the government with your money against the individual. I'm comparing the corporate finance department at Walmart to the individual, and that is a battle that they're going to lose every time. The individual is going to go to Applebee's or speculate on cryptocurrencies. Walmart is going to decide whether we should increase the dividend, whether we should pay off debt, whether we should do bonuses for employees, raise their wage. Look at all the decisions they had to make based on this tax. People don't behave that way, and because of that, you get higher economic growth. And it's not the government saying so, it's the tax foundation. And you need to get economic growth to get everybody's salary up.
It shouldn't be the government's job to decide, oh, if we cut it here, we'll get higher economic growth. Cut it for everyone.
Yeah.
That's great if you're running a surplus and if you're trying to get votes, but if you have a limited amount of tax cuts to do.
That's why I said at the beginning the government needs to tighten its belt. Lee was saying basically the same thing. We need to come at it from both perspectives.
John, you were once
in a world of limited tax cuts to do, you have to choose where to get the most bang for your buck, and in that world, it's Walmart, not the household.
John, you were once a professional fighter. You break this up, and that will be the final word.
Jonas, if you repeat yourself, it makes you repetitive. It doesn't make you correct. Look, the budget argument is just wrong. We went from $5 trillion in debt to $20 trillion in 16 years, and that was in a high tax environment and a low tax environment, high corporate tax rate, low corporate tax rate. These guys can't balance the budget. This argument over tax cuts, dealing with deficits, is absolutely ridiculous. We got a debt. It's a complete separate issue. Give money back to Americans. Let them do with it. It's their money.
Amen. Hallelujah. Thanks, guys and gals. Cavuto on Business about 20 minutes from now. Charles Payne is in for Neil. Charles, what have you got?
Hey, Dagan, we know which immigration meeting is making headlines today, but it's something specific about this one that captured our gang's attention. Plus, a new rule for some Medicaid recipients who are able to work for government assistance. Now, some say it's heartless, but someone here says it's the best thing for them and taxpayers in the long run. See you soon.
Thanks, Charles. We can't wait. But coming up next, right here, it's no secret that cities nationwide are fighting for Amazon's second headquarters. But what they're offering the tech giant is a secret. Should it be if it's taxpayer money? We'll debate it.
Live from America's News headquarters in Washington, I'm Jillian Turner. 18 people now confirmed dead in those devastating mudslides across Southern California. The latest victim, an 87-year-old man found in his home. The death toll could still rise since authorities say that 7 people missing at this hour. More than 1,200 emergency personnel are on the scene as they continue to search for survivors. And it's a clean bill of health for the commander-in-chief. President Trump's White House doctor declaring him, quote, in excellent health following his first physical exam Friday at Walter Reed Medical Center. The examination included measuring of the president's blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar. The President Trump is recovering this weekend at his Florida home. I'm Jillian Turner. Now back to Bulls and Bears.
Officials across the country shouting from the rooftops for Amazon to pick their city for its second headquarters. But when it comes to what perks they've promised the tech giant, that's right, silence, crickets. Many states and cities refusing to disclose what they put on the table, including tax breaks, over fears it could put them at a competitive disadvantage. For whatever city is chosen, Amazon is expected to spend more than $5 billion in construction and bring in as many as 50,000 jobs. Lee, should these cities and regions reveal anything that's paid with tax dollars?
I think they absolutely should, because I think this goes at a lot of things. Number one, it's the individual's money. It's a taxpayer's money, and I think they should know what's happening with their money. I also think that this says something about the leadership of those states and those communities. What are they offering? What are they incenting to try and improve these places that really need the jobs? There's a lot of cities out there that could benefit from having a big employer that are going by the wayside otherwise. So I think it's really important that this becomes something that people know what it's all about and what's on the table.
John, do the taxpayers deserve to know what's been put out there?
No, they don't. And I respectfully disagree with Lee. And I say they don't deserve to know what has been put out there. They deserve to know after it's happened. Look, this is a competitive bid right now. You have 238 different entities right now around the country bidding for this Amazon second headquarters. Somebody is going to get this, and this is how this should work. Cities and states should bid for this. City and state that wants it the most and is able to give the most should be able to get this, and 50,000 jobs in perpetuity. That is a huge economic boost, but it's a competitive bid. I'm for transparency in government, but not in this case, because what you'll do is you'll let everybody else know what you're bidding, and somebody's going to outbid you by $1, which puts it into a bidding war, which is not necessary.
Gary B., by revealing it, you could jeopardize actually getting this second headquarters.
That's absolutely true. But let me just, one little sidebar here. I hate this whole bidding thing. And, if Amazon was really benevolent, they should just say, you know what? Forget all the tax breaks. We're going to go to Youngstown, Ohio, and rejuvenate that economy. Of course they won't, but that's what I would like in a perfect world. To the point that Lee and John made, they both made excellent points. I come down on the side of Lee. It's just the same as the federal government. Whose money is it? You're asking probably to raise taxes, to issue municipal bonds, to do all this stuff, use eminent domain to take over a private property, all for the sake of Amazon. I think that's great. Seattle has certainly benefited from it. But in the end, it's the people's money. I understand you may be showing your cards. Well, tough.
Just should these cities and regions fess up on what they're putting, what they're offering for Jeff Bezos and his $100 billion pocketbook?
I think so, but I do want to make it clear that I actually agree with what everybody has been saying, which doesn't usually happen. And we all remember that Gary actually agreed with me, which I think was the first ever in the last segment. I do think that there should be transparency about this. I think there is a way to do that in kind of more broad strokes if the community is concerned about what is being given away. And this isn't just, money. You're talking about eminent domain, for instance, as Gary mentioned there. And I think that it's important to have those conversations. But I think that when the occupants of wherever this headquarters may go hear those 50,000 jobs, right, and the $5 billion investment, they're going to be pretty cool with whatever it is that's being offered. So be on the up and up. It is their money that you're spending, and be honest, but I don't know if you have to tell every single detail.
Jonas, to you finally, but again, it's kind of obvious who's going to be the most desperate. Do we even need to know the numbers? I think New Jersey's offering about $7 billion in breaks, of course.
Did you imagine being the guy or gal who works for Amazon who gets to go around telling states, what do you got for me? I'm coming into town. We're looking for moving the factory there. And also, like, yeah, John's right. You can't make this public. It's bad enough that that person is also like, Atlanta's giving us free electricity and unlimited peaches in the cafeteria for life. What do you got? Like, you can't. If you want an example of a company being too big, what the negatives are, this is basically it. Other than that, there's a lot of positives. But this much market power, it's like, when are they just going to give them the keys to the White House? It's down the road at the rate they're growing.
Well, that's a conversation for another day. Again, Jeff Bezos looks like he's in fighting shape, worth north of $100 billion. You never know. Thanks, guys and gals. Cashing in just over an hour from now. Trish Regan, what do you have coming up?
Hi, Dagan. Detainees at Guantanamo Bay suing the U.S. amid new calls to shut the prison down for good. Why someone here says that could actually be a very costly move. Plus, consumers outraged because of a massive new soda tax. Why is the government telling us what we can and cannot drink? I'll see you on Cashin' In, 11:30 a.m. Eastern.
Thank you, Trish. We'll be watching. But up here first, want to bring both parties together? President Trump floating an idea that Democrats and Republicans might sink their teeth into. But someone here says it'll end up costing you. Next. That's right. Next Saturday, Neil is kicking off his new show, Cavuto Live, next week, every week. And we'll be joining him. Thanks to you, our Cost of Freedom fans, our most loyal viewers. We've been the best 2 hours in business anywhere, year in, year out. And now Neil's taking it live. We wish him major success, and we'll be right there by his side. Hope to see you there. But right here first, a battle over pork spending starting to sizzle on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers scheduling hearings for next week on whether or not they should bring back earmarks. John, with our national debts topping $20 trillion, can we really afford to bring back pork barrel projects?
No, this is why we have no control of anything in Washington, D.C. This is theft, plain and simple. Imagine that people saying that this only way you can get things done is to bribe people. How about we elect politicians who do the right thing for the right reason? I know that's an archaic idea, but perhaps it would work for a change in Washington, D.C.
Gary B., yay or nay on earmarks?
Yay, I guess. And here's why. We are called the United States of America. We're not called the Kingdom of America, where a king can rule by fiat. We have all the states fighting with each other. You give me this, I give you that. That's the way it works. It's pork or whatever. Yes, it's horrible. But that's the way bills are passed, because the states look out for themselves, as it should be.
Jonas, my personal favorite earmark, swine manure management. What do you say?
Trump is right. Trump was built his empire in the 80s in New York City. You couldn't get a concrete truck to show up without greasing somebody's palms. That is how it works. And now small states like Alaska, people-wise, are deciding big policy decisions like repealing Obamacare because they're not getting the bridges to nowhere they used to get votes. And now we just have no policies anymore.
Jess?
Nay on the earmarks, but maybe we could reform the process and make it a little bit cleaner, and then we could get that. I agree this is how things get done, but I don't think the American people should be ripped off, so I'm saying no until we can do it in a cleaner way.
Lee, unleash your pent-up rage.
No, there should not be earmarks, and I think this is the exact reason why the American people does not trust Congress. They're basically stealing our money and acting in their own best interest and not necessarily for the American people. No, no, no.
Yeah, you know what earmarks are? I'll leave you with this. Shrimp on a treadmill. Thanks, guys. A special thanks to Lee and Jessica for joining us today and all these days. The name that one of our bulls and bears says will give you a 100% return. 100%. Next. Predictions. Chartman, go.
Blast from the past. 18 years of predictions, Dagan. I'm going to end with my best one. Just buy the market. It's going to double in the next 10 years. DIA, Dow Diamond.
Jonas, are you that bullish?
Not in the next 10 months. I think she's going down.
With 10 years, come on, we get a double. Yay or nay?
10 years, yay.
Okay.
10 months,
Thank you.
nay.
John, prediction.
The new tax cut policy is going to help companies like Blackstone. It has a 5% yield. I think it's up 20% in a year.
Are you long Blackstone, Gary B?
I am not. It's shot straight up recently. I like it. Wait for a pullback, though.
Jonas, your prediction.
Watch out, Tesla. While Elon Musk was partying, GM has been making some major advancements in self-driving cars. The latest one, which is production ready, no steering wheel. GM up 20% in a year.
No steering,
Look, Ma, no hands.
no steering wheel, no pedals. John, I think you would take that over a car driven by Jonas, though.
I think it would. I might be on his back of his scooter. And after 18 years, I still have no idea what Jonas says in predictions.
I love you all. We love our viewers. Charles is now.
Unprecedented, remarkable, extraordinary. Just some of the words used by the mainstream media to describe President Trump's televised immigration meeting earlier this week. And despite some controversial comments at another meeting, Deirdre Bolton says this is public negotiations on immigration, and this is what everybody should be talking about. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Painter for Neil Cavuto. To Charlie Gasparino, Deirdre Bolton, Ben Stein, and Adam Lashinsky. All right, Deirdre, I mean, it was remarkable. It was something many people said they've never seen before.
It was indeed. And listen, President Trump understands the media. I mean, it's not for nothing that he had a very successful TV career. And I think that was a great visual. It did get people talking. The problem is, less than 24 hours later, we had some very vulgar language from him on a completely different topic. But even if we just want to look at that immigration issue, it was a very good visual, but brass tacks, nothing got decided.
55 minutes, you know, and here's what I liked about it, Charlie. Everyone was able to speak their mind. It wasn't one of those sycophantic meetings at the cabinet, you know, and everyone's sort of genuflexing. You had the folks in there like Dick Durbin saying, hey, this is what I like, don't like, and President Trump was listening.
Right, 55 minutes, and he didn't say anything stupid, which I think is maybe a record for him. Listen, it was a good meeting. I wouldn't go as far as to say this was like watching Haley's Comet go by, but it was a good meeting. It showed that, you know, the mainstream media was obsessed with the sort of notion or I believe the lie that President Trump is insane after the Michael Wolff book came out. This just showed, this and a couple other things he did after that showed that he's not insane. I don't agree with his comments.
He's a little obsessed with it, too.
Well, yeah, I know. He says some outrageously dumb things. I'm there. And, you know, but he is not insane. He handled himself really well in this meeting, and it shows that if he puts his mind to it, he can govern.
Adam?
So I actually don't think that it shows anything. What we already knew about Donald Trump, as Charlie pointed out, that he's a pretty good television performer, and he was a very good television performer during this session. He, in fact, stuck to the script the whole time, which was to appear presidential. Once upon a time, he promised us he would be presidential all the time, and he needs to do it for more than 55 minutes on television.
I think, Ben, maybe President Trump's idea of presidential is different than Adam's, and he thinks he is the president, so whatever he does by default is presidential. And by the way, I'm not sure that was scripted, okay? It felt like to me more of a business meeting, not a reality TV show where you bounce ideas off of each other and you try to come to some sort of conclusion and agreements.
Well, I think everything that a TV personality does on TV, take it from a person who's been a TV personality on TV for a long time, is scripted, and to some extent, at least it's scripted in your head, and you know what you want to say, you know the impression you want to give, and that's what Mr. Trump did. He knew the impression he wanted to give. He wanted to give the statesman-like impression. He wanted to contradict that Mr. Wolff's book and give the impression that he was a thoughtful, solid genius, although I have to say the idea of a person describing himself as a solid genius is comical. I don't think even Einstein would describe himself that way. But
very stable.
Let's just say
I don't want to digress. I don't want to digress.
Solid, stable genius. I don't think solid, stable geniuses have to go around saying that. I don't think Samuel Johnson said that.
But the fact of the matter is, though, Deirdre, is that, you know, we have fun with this, but it was a moment that I had not seen personally. I hadn't really seen anything like that.
No, so it was one of a kind.
Whether it was staged or not, I thought it helped President Trump. I thought it helped the idea that maybe we'll get through some of this bipartisanship. Maybe we'll break through that resistance barrier that the Democrats have put up.
I was right there with you, Charles. I really was. Okay, this is impressive. It did kind of calm the chatter about this Michael Wolff book, and it did seem most people say, like, we hate Congress because they're always fighting and they're not really doing anything for the American people. And it showed, okay, listen, we have both parties sitting here around this table. We're talking about this event that is very important to all of us, which is with this looming deadline. How do we solve these immigration issues? How do we solve these spending issues? I thought it was very strong. I think where I was personally disappointed was the 24 hours that followed with this kind of comment against some of the countries and some of the lottery programs that we're having and some of the name calling that again seemed to just yank back to like a third grade schoolyard.
Right. Although ironically, maybe that argues even more for the idea that maybe all of these meetings should be transparent that way.
They are.
Well, sir, that was terror. Sir, what he did the next 24 hours was terrifying.
Yeah.
It was not just upsetting; it was terrifying. And we've got to really get Mr. Trump get his head around the idea that he has to not only think he's president, he's got to act like a president. He's got to think about FDR. He's got to think about Dwight Eisenhower. He's got to think out.
Even by the way,
there are norms.
by the way, his defenders. Let me just make this point. His defenders are saying, well, as Ben brings up FDR and Ronald Reagan, his defenders are saying, well, how about LBJ and Nixon? Give me a break. They're using to defend Donald Trump's statements.
I think even today,
LBJ and Nixon.
But even today, Haiti was loyal to the U.S. Remember when we went in front of the UN, we had the Jerusalem vote. Haiti actually, demurred, right? Norway voted against us. So I just.
Yeah, I mean, but getting back though to Tuesday, because again. Listen, we know we'll never get the sort of credibility that I think it should get in the mainstream media. But the President Trump did do the things that you wanted him to do, Adam. He did act the way that you wanted him to act. And maybe he'll do it again in the future. And
he did. It was a a giant breakthrough in many ways.
No.
I'm sorry, Adam.
Whether or not it's
I'm sorry, Adam, for taking your time. Sorry for taking your time, Adam.
Clearly, President Trump is capable of conducting a mature, adult, responsible conversation, and that's exactly what he did. And yes, Charles, I think it's a wonderful thing. We should have more of it, and the American people should get to see our leaders having mature, responsible
hold on a second. Charlie, I mean, it always feels like when we have these conversations, it's the exact reason, the antithesis of what the folks who voted for President Trump want. They want the President Trump that you guys seem to disdain, have a disdain for.
Well, they represent 35% of the population.
Well, no, they represent enough of the population that propelled them to the White House.
No, wait a second. A lot of people held their nose, I know this for a fact, and voted for Trump because they couldn't deal with a criminal.
The bottom line is he is in the White House.
I understand that, but don't tell me that people, the world loves this stuff because most people hate it.
Listen, I'll articulate what I was saying one more time. I will say that the people who voted for President Trump, the core voters love him.
That's 30%. That's 30% of the population.
You're absolutely right.
Anyway, 30% of the population.
Listen, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. That means somebody had to vote for him, and those people who voted for him, they still love him, and they don't want him to hold the meeting, Adam, the way you want him to hold it. They like the way he speaks. They think it's plain speak, and they love it. It's not politically correct, and they think the elitists have hid behind that kind of language for a long time.
I agree with you 100%, Charles, which makes it so interesting that, this guy who is, again, I don't say this dismissively. He is a performer, and that's the performance that he chose to give. He gave a performance that I liked. You're right. And you're 100% right that the next day he goes and he performs the way his voters want him to perform. And that's disturbing to me.
Yeah, and by the way, most people don't I don't know what poll you're talking about. Okay, tell me polls don't matter.
No, Charles,
most people don't like this stuff.
Guys, I'm not talking about polls. The polls failed themselves.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about the result
this.
of the election. That's all I'm talking about, which cannot be disputed. President Trump
but that doesn't mean acting like a moron is good.
No, I'm not. Listen, it's up to
you.
And
we can't criticize.
If you want to call him that, that's fine.
No,
but he is the president of the United States.
I didn't call him that. I said he's acting like it.
Let me give Ben. I got 30 seconds, and I want to give you the final word on this. How do you see President Trump being able to make his way through D.C. and it's Tuesday the right way in your mind to do it?
I think he did it very well, and I'm unfortunate for a follow-up, but I think he's doing it very well, and I think he's a pioneer, and I think we're going to remember him very, very fondly.
All right, gentlemen, and of course, Deirdre. Hey, you can bet that Neil will be all over how the media is covering this president next Saturday when he launches his new show, Cavuto Live. He'll kick it off live from our nation's capital 1 year since Trump took office, and, well, we'll be here to kick it off with him. How'd the president do for your taxes, your job, and, of course, this stock market in his first year? And, well, where do we go from here? You cannot afford to miss it, so don't miss it. Every Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Up next here, the administration taking heat for opening the door for Medicaid recipients to work for aid. Heartless or the best way to give them hope? We'll debate You decide.
Today on Forbes on Fox, the list keeps growing of U.S. companies announcing bonuses and pay hikes for their workers as a result of the tax bill. But Democrats calling it crumbs for the middle class. So who's right? And how's this going to impact the midterms? Plus, South Korea giving Trump credit for making talks with North Korea work. Is the tough talk paying off? We'll see you at the top of the hour.
Live from America's News headquarters in Washington, D.C., I'm Jillian Turner. A person has been taken into custody following a possible hostage situation aboard a Greyhound bus. The police pursuit began late last night on Interstate 94 in Wisconsin, following a report of an armed suspect on board. That bus eventually stopped after crossing into Illinois, and 50 passengers were evacuated. No injuries reported at this time. And Edgar Ray Killen, who was convicted for a notorious crime during the Civil Rights era, has died in a Mississippi prison. Killen was a former leader of the Ku Klux Klan who orchestrated the murder of 3 civil rights workers in 1964. That crime inspired the movie Mississippi Burning. His conviction in 2005 coming 41 years after the murders. Killen was 92. I'm Jillian Turner. Now back to Cavuto on Business.
Work for 8. The Trump administration announcing this week it will allow states to require people to work or volunteer in their communities in order to receive Medicaid, given that they're physically able to. Kentucky becoming the first state to make this happen. Several other states already submitting proposals to implement the new requirements, but critics say it's cruel. But Charlie, you say this could actually help people?
Well, it's called welfare reform. We tried it back in the 1990s. Some great American mayors like Rudy Giuliani and Ed Rendell and a few others. It worked then. People who are getting government assistance, working for that is not a bad thing. Medicaid is government assistance. And I don't think the government should be in the business of just handing checks to people. I mean, I think that is, earning a check goes a long way to helping you get back in to the private sector. Right. And I think it worked then, and I think it works now.
Deirdre, the critics are saying, though, if someone's on Medicaid or they're receiving this, they probably have a medical problem that's stopping them from working. So you're going to have someone who's medically unfit forcing them to work. Well, this is what critics are saying, Deirdre.
Yeah, indeed. And there are a lot of critics saying essentially that society has a responsibility to its more vulnerable, which does include the ill, the injured, people who are pregnant, people who are students, children. So you have that. And then, of course, you have on the other side the fact that this is $400 billion every year as a part of our budget. I think at the end of the day, what is being suggested and what is going to come to pass is probably not going to move the needle. I think this is more a philosophical conversation because I think something like 59% of Medicaid recipients who can work are already working. So we're talking about a smaller group. That came from Kaiser Family Foundation, which is nonpartisan.
Right. But Ben, 10 states did request this. Kentucky's already implementing it. So, and we know that this Medicaid is busting a lot of state budgets.
I think it's a wonderful idea to allow people to work if they are physically able. Work is redemptive. Work makes people feel better about themselves. I think work makes people feel physically healthy and mentally healthy. And I think the idea of allowing people to do it, not compelling them to do it, but allowing the states to say, give it a try, give it a whirl. If it doesn't work out, if it makes you sicker, then you don't have to do it anymore. But give it a whirl. I think you're going to find a lot of people are getting healthier, not less healthy from doing it.
Adam?
No one disputes any of that, but that's the problem. It's not a question of saying this would be a good idea, let's give it a whirl. The question is, what do you do when they can't, and are you going to make sure that they get care? Because that's what this is really all about. I mean, this is about a social safety net. So we have to have an honest political conversation. You either want a social safety net or you don't want
Would
a
you
social
agree,
safety
Adam,
net.
that people have abused this system, though? I mean, would you agree that there's a lot of abuse?
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course,
Listen, no, I don't think anybody's saying
all of these programs get abused.
Adam, I don't think anybody's saying that people in wheelchairs that need Medicaid should be going out doing construction work. I mean, there's a medium here. I mean, this is a freebie.
What are they saying, though? The people in the wheelchairs need to do something.
This is well, maybe they can do something, but this is something, okay? But this is a freebie.
By all means, let's encourage them to do something.
Right,
I totally agree.
And most people in wheelchairs want to do something. So I'm just telling you that
of course they
this
do.
is a freebie.
I agree.
It should be some sort of way that the person kicks into getting getting his
And
right.
there are the
But we
exempted,
do-
there are the exempted
We do know,
categories.
though, also, though, that the Trump administration is looking even at larger welfare reform as well. We know there's going to be great pushback, even though Bill Clinton was famous for implementing welfare, worked welfare, and it worked out pretty well for
Yeah, and I just want to underline, even with what's being discussed now, there are very clear exempted categories, just so that doesn't get lost in translation. So if somebody is actually ill, no one, in theory, is going to come knocking on their door and say, like, yeah, we think you should be working construction.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're
Well,
ill, you're ill. Like, that has been
Ben,
clarified.
but there are a lot of people out there now who, for lack of a better word, have gotten so accustomed to this sort of aid, it's difficult for them to get off of it. In fact, listen, we brought it out to welfare. Some people are born cradle to grave. And is there the responsibility of the government to break that cycle?
I think there is a responsibility. I mean, who's going to do it if not the person who's the caretaker? And it will be so good for people to start working. I'm not just concerned about the taxpayer, although I am concerned about the taxpayer, but I'm concerned about the mental health and stability, stable, solid, genius capabilities of people who are working, are not working, and are getting handouts. It's really bad for them.
Adam, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, just that I wish that this weren't being linked to health care. I'm totally in favor of encouraging all people to work. I agree with everything everybody said about work being redemptive, work being a good thing. But we also need to make sure that everyone gets health care, period.
Okay. Let's leave it there.
Absolutely right.
Football fans may not have seen these images in a while, but NBC says they'll change during the Super Bowl. They're going to highlight any protester doing the anthem on the big day. Is that the right move or the wrong move? We'll debate it. You decide. It's been a while since network televised those anthem protests, but NBC says that's going to change if anyone takes a knee during the Super Bowl. Charlie, is this a play to increase ratings? I mean, what's going on here?
I think it's absurd, and here's why. I have done some reporting on this. The average NFL viewer is almost the identical of the average Trump voter. It skews largely white male, skews largely with an income under $100,000 a year. It skews highly more military than the rest of the population, and they also hate this one knee controversy, which is why. And the NFL knows it. I've done some reporting on this. They've crunched the numbers. They despise it. They know that part of the reason why viewership.
Why are they doing it?
I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that they're doing some counter programming.
Well, I mean,
where they want to they say they're going to show this. They're telling us, they're going to show this. It's for the same reason why our ratings go up when people are cursing me out, criticizing Donald Trump. That's the only thing.
But really, though, I mean, in this particular case, because we know that the ratings have come down. We've seen photos of the empty seats. But in this case,
I think the Super Bowl is a unique kind of event. I mean, 100 million people, more or less, watch. So to me, this goes even beyond the typical football. Maybe less, but it goes beyond the typical football fan. I mean, people watch because they want to see the advertisement. Yeah, they want to see the advertisements. I mean, 100 million people. And listen, the anthem, rightly or wrongly, will be played, right? Pink is going to sing it, and it's before the game. So if people really don't want to see this, they can just wait a little longer to turn.
No, people are going to be watching like popcorn, like the beginning of an old Mike Tyson fight, looking for an early knockout. But Ben, why should NBC be this provocative? I mean, because we all know that it's the biggest televised event any given year.
Because you just answered your own question, kind sir. Provocative means controversy, and controversy means people watch it, and people are going to watch it, and they're going to say those SOBs, but they're going to watch it. Now, some of them will turn it off, and the NFL ratings are going down, and maybe this will just push them down.
Yeah, I mean, I think the long-term effect.
I have a different perspective, Charles.
All right, Adam.
No, I think it would be completely un-American for them to not show it. I mean, this would be something that the Chinese or the old Soviets would do. There's something meaningful happening on our program, but we're not showing it to you because we don't want to upset you.
They don't show it now, though. They haven't showed it in a while. They haven't showed it in weeks.